It is October 1st, 2020, which of course in Michigan means it is opening day of bow season. So to all the hunters that are going to be going outside, getting in the woods, I hope you fill your tag and I hope you fill it soon. The purpose of this video today is to talk about a press release that the Department of Natural Resources issued last week. And to my surprise, to the surprise of sportsmen all throughout Michigan, we learned that they have drastically cut the amount of chronic wasting disease testing that will be available this year. So chronic wasting disease is a neurological disease, and there's this little protein, which is a prion, and it gets into the deer's brain, and it causes a significant amount of brain damage, and eventually the deer will become emaciated, and it will waste away, hence the name chronic wasting disease. The big problem is that it is fatal 100% of the time. There is no cure, and it is easily transmittable. And as we've been seeing throughout the state of Michigan, it has been spreading slowly but surely. So I was able to find this map from a committee hearing I was in last year. It was given by the state veterinarian. It's not 100% up to date, but it gives a good idea of where chronic wasting disease is, how many cases there have been. So if you look, definitely ground zero has been in Montcalm County, and it's spreading into Kent and Ione counties, which is where my district is in the 86th district. It's also throughout mid-Michigan. It's in Clinton, Gratiot, Ingham, Jackson, Eaton. And unfortunately, I think it was 2 years ago, the first case was detected in the Upper Peninsula, so it's spreading there as well. Another map that is useful to look at is the deer management units. It kind of breaks out different areas based on severity of the number of cases. So you have the dark blue section here of Newaygo, Mecosta, Montcalm, Ionia, Kent County. Those are the core CWD areas. But I just want to make sure everybody has a good picture to understand where the cases are, because as we'll see from the press release, there's a bit of confusion as to where the testing is going to be available and why that doesn't quite line up so much with where most of the cases have been. So here's the press release that was put out on September 22nd, which was last week. And there's information in here. It talks about how they're trying to increase social distancing at the check station. So there's some changes there. I encourage you to read through the press release to see stuff about that. But the main thing that I wanted to point out from this press release is where the testing is going to be available. So if you look here, they're going to have testing from October 3rd to January 4th. They're going to have it in Jackson, Southern Isabella, and Western Gratiot counties, and they're going to have some in the Upper Peninsula as well. But for some reason, specifically in Montcalm County, I really don't understand why Montcalm County is only going to have testing there for 3 days this entire deer season, from November 15th through the 18th. That's the most number of cases that I'm aware of is in Montcalm County, and it's spreading kind of quickly into Ione and Kent counties, into my district. And I just can't quite understand why the department, first of all, why they decided to cut testing in the first place. And if they did decide to cut testing, why don't you go where there's the most cases to see what's going on? Now, I do want to point out, just because the DNR is not going to be offering chronic wasting disease testing in those areas, doesn't mean that you can't get your deer tested. There is information on their website. Here it is here. I have it. And it talks about how you can send the lymph nodes of the deer out to Wisconsin. Has a bunch of information. Honestly, it looks kind of like it's going to be a pain to actually have to go through this. I know somebody who did it. It's a little bit expensive. I think they ended up costing like $30. So if you look at the press release, the explanation given by the Department of Natural Resources as to why they're cutting back on chronic wasting disease testing is because of financial shortages. They talk about the COVID-19 pandemic. They talk about staffing. So keep in mind that this press release was put out on September 22nd, which coincidentally happened to be one day before the legislature voted on the budget. So everything by that point in time had been ironed out. The bill had already been written, and there wouldn't be any opportunity for changes at that point in time. So let's look at what the DNR budget shows. If you look, I'm going to show you here. So this is what the budget had last year for the entire Department of Natural Resources. It's about $438 million. This year, there's actually an increase, which if you look at a lot of budgets, I chair the corrections budget, I tell you there wasn't a lot of increases there. The Department of Natural Resources budget actually had a 7% increase year over year to their budget. If you look through, there's lots of one-time funding. There's a Milliken Visitor Center up on Mackinac Island for $2.5 million. The wildlife management line item, from talking to the House Fiscal Agency, this is where the testing is paid for, is through this line item. It's a $46 million line item. It did have about a $500,000 cut. In my opinion, there's lots of things in here. If the Department of Natural Resources would have been forthright that they were slashing chronic wasting disease testing by this much, we could have maybe looked at other areas that maybe weren't as high of a priority. So I know sportsmen are frustrated about the lack of CWD testing this year. I know I am. I'm looking into seeing what legislative action could be taken, but unfortunately, there's not much that can be done this year. I think basically what's going to be available is set in stone. So I still encourage hunters to go out, harvest the deer. The only way we're going to get ahead of this is by harvesting as many deer in these CWD areas, harvesting as many as possible. If you still really want to get the deer tested and it's outside of the window when testing is available, send the test to Wisconsin. I can guarantee you I will be monitoring this issue very closely for this year, next year, and the years to come. So thank you for all your time, and God bless.